Hello and welcome to the Reds Report, Barnsley FC's longest running podcast. We are part of the TalkSport Fans Network and sponsored by Barnsley Sport. Every match during the season gets you 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw and naffle for a loss. After a 2-0 win over Oxford, Tuesday's visit up Ipswich felt a little bit more than just another match though. Two informed teams going head-to-head with an automatic promotion, all but sealed for one and still an outside chance for the other. Evening didn't go as planned. And as we know, the team from East Anglia eventually left Oakwell with 3 points. So what happened? It's the Ipswich autopsy and a little bit about Oxford as well. Here to talk everything Barnsley FC is the man with the best blog out there. Because you can say that, can't you? That's just the innuendo there. It's Ian from the Tykesblog. Good evening, Ian.
I've never been introduced as the man with the biggest blog.
Well, I'll take it. Well, I talked to your lass, and she says, what he'll like is if you...
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good evening.
I would normally at this point introduce you, Steve Andrews, now. Some say he's gone to the cinema this evening. However, we all know he's done 5 days at work, and he's probably laid in bed with a cocoa, his steady, and slippers on, watching. Is it still in the night garden or has it gone off? So there's no Steve this week, which means we don't have to edit any swear words at all. Right, Ian. Oxford then. We never really got out of sort of like third gear. It seemed to be. We know Oxford was struggling. I think it was clear to see why. 14 shots, 6 on target. 47% possession, but we know for Barnsley possession doesn't mean much because it's what you do with that possession. Tadic and Cole started up front. Tadic, 2 goals, 2 assists by Phillips. We talk about Adam Phillips a lot because we say he keeps sort of like drifting in and out. But if you provide 2 assists for 2 goals and a 2-0 home win, you're allowed to drift in and out a bit, I suppose, aren't you?
He's a real conundrum, isn't he, Adam Phillips? And I don't wish to be sound really bad, but throughout that month or two when he was scoring some like 5 or 6 in a row or whatever he did, and he always pops up on the edge of the area, doesn't he? And he's got a great shot on him. But we've been saying it, Duff's been saying it, that he doesn't play for 90 minutes. And at time, in a lot of games, it looks like we're carrying him. But then he has this knack that makes you look stupid on a podcast when you're slagging him off one week, and then he'll create 2 assists, or he'll score a screamer from 30 yards, or he'll do something, and somebody must be thinking, do these guys know what they're talking about? Do they actually watch him? Because he really is one of them, Minty, that if you took him out, what would our stats look like with all the goals he scored? How many points would we be outside the playoffs? But when you think of what Connell gives you for 90 minutes or a Kitchen gives you for 90 minutes, he does drift in and out, but he deserves a place just for, I mean, you look at those crosses against Oxford, they were just asking to be put away, weren't they, by the strikers? So he is a really, really odd one to discuss, that he's not a 90-minute player, but he's a game changer. Is that fair to say?
100%. And I think we've had episodes that we called living off scraps or feeding off scraps. We've had episodes where we said we can't knock the front 2 because there's no service. And he seems to have changed that like a little bit, as in he scored himself. But these assists, I mean, it's like you say, where would we be? It'd be really interesting to see without his assists or goals, where would we be? And it's fair to say that was that's our preferred 11, isn't it? You know, we know the back 3, we know the 2 wing backs, we know those 3 central midfields, we know up front as well. There's not much to say about Oxford. I thought, I think you can see why they are struggling and you know why they are when they are. And the table doesn't lie after like 42 matches or something. So it you know, I can't say we didn't break a sweat, but it wasn't one of our most difficult matches at home. And 2-0. You almost felt a little bit like just 2-0, because at home we've had some teams, but these were the teams like when Plymouth came and Portsmouth came and Derby. These team came to play football, and it felt a little bit like these were probably going to try, but they were never good enough, so they were a bit more hesitant in coming forward. And then it's breaking that wall down. We did it twice, and that then sets us up really nicely. We win 9 home games unbeaten. And then the Ipswich game, like I said in the introduction, that was always a different one. Because where they are in the table. B, their form versus or our form. C, potentially that number 2 slot that was possible, but maybe not probable for us. When the team came out, I was doing commentary again for the hospital radio, and the media officer Basel, he came with the team sheet, and you look at my first glance, oh yeah, good team, and Russell, and then who's missing? And you said it before. I think certain players are maybe replaceable. So if you look at the front 2, if we would have started with Tedic instead of Norwood, you would have said, well, he's just scored 20, so that's all right. If in goal, Eisted's been really good, but there's Colin, defenseman, but Connell has been so pivotal in everything that works well for Barnsley. So when you saw the team, what goes through your head when there is no Luca Connell?
I hope he's not out for a couple of weeks. That's what I was worried about, that there's a knock and he could miss playoffs because he is so pivotal to us. And then thankfully it was just like a bit of a sickness for a few hours, wasn't it? So he is pivotal to us, but we've got to be careful that we don't over-rely on him as well. I think him and Kane worked really well, but it was clear when he didn't play, we lost that engine in our engine room. I know Kane tried, don't get me wrong, but we missed it. And Russell isn't up to speed, is he? We know that, and it probably wasn't the best like-for-like swap, really, if truth be known.
Have we got a like-for-like? Have we got a like-for-like swap? Would Benson have fitted in there better?
Well, before Christmas, I'd have said Benson, because Benson, in the first half of the season, even slotted in at right back for the cup game against Crewe. And he was kind of like, he could fit anywhere and he was willing to play anywhere. And he was probably getting 7 out of 10s, whatever. But with injuries and stuff, he seems to have regressed, Benson. So a Benson probably pre-Christmas or sort of late summer, early autumn, I'd have said yes, but not now. But Russell's not ready. That's the problem. Maybe you put Russell in because he's big and strong and you think, well, he might be able to boss it more than Benson would. But it just didn't work, did it? That was the problem. It didn't work.
Yeah. I think from what we've seen, listen, I know the train and, they're always ready, but I think it's such a pivotal role, like you said. It's a key position, and he is a different type of midfielder than what Luca Connell is. I think it took him a little bit to get into the match. There were a few misplaced passes, but he did pick up.
Picked up a yellow card early as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And I actually, I looked at times. I tell you what I really liked, what he did a couple of times. And I know this is really stupid and really minor, but when you play the head tennis and we're heading it forward and their defense hands it out, he just headed it sideways to somebody. So the ball was on the floor rather than going. And there's flashes of a play. I just think he needs more game time. And now that we'll talk about it later, maybe now, we know where we're going to finish. And does it make a difference, third or fourth? We'll discuss later. Maybe he'll get a bit more game time. Overall, pretty. I mean, up front, no one can call. Do you prefer to under? Let's be honest. If you're going to play Ipswich, Cole, because of the goals he scores, and Norwood, it's his old teammates, so he'll want to try and maybe get an extra 5%. Yeah. Both teams had 10 shots. Both had 5 on target. I think what's interesting that Ipswich often went route 1, and I think Duff alluded to that in his press conference. And in fact, their manager said as well, because they found it so hard with the press, they just had to go that route 1. When we talk about 2 of the goal scorers, though, Ian, the familiar names on there. If anybody was going to score, Ersty was going to get one. He's a South Yorkshire lad. Yeah. And that goal, is there somebody at fault there, do you think? Is it fair to say that Anderson probably maybe, is he half a yard off the pace? Should he have been closer? Should he have got to it earlier? Should he have cut it out? How did you see that one?
I think they say they went route 1 because of the press, but you could argue that it probably would have been a tactical genius, because when you look at the way Anderson got spun for one of the goals, it reminded me a bit reminiscent of Bolton in January when he committed the penalty and got sent off. Yeah. If you back into him and spin him, he wants to fight you. And just recently, he's wanted to get into a real physical battle. He's picked up a couple of yellow cards where he slam dunked people to the floor like WWE. And there's just been something in his trait where just these last couple of games, and he was exposed for it. So maybe our probably Achilles heel is somebody going long, going over the midfield, isolating the centre halves, or certainly Anderson, and having somebody who's quick and strong who can because Anderson's quick, to spin him, and you usually one-on-one with the keeper then, or Anderson will then pull you down because he has got this thing in him where he will try and take you down. So I think there was errors, and was it Anderson that gave the penalty away as well? I think was a bit clumsy.
Two players, wasn't it? Two players, and
Anderson was one of them.
Yeah, I think it was Anderson and Kitchen.
Yeah.
The thing was, you give the referee a decision to make, and when two defensive players almost cross into each other or sandwich an opposition player in the box and they go down, it's very hard. Although the Ipswich fans said it was never a penalty.
No, but they'll scream for it, won't they? And that will influence the referee. I thought it was poor, to be honest. But I thought, going back to your original point, there was they switched off for the goal from the corner? Where he nicked in, switched off there, gave Isted no chance. The ball over the top, spun Anderson. I just felt of the two teams, it seemed a really open game. We weren't horrendous. We've just come up against the best team in that division, who are in a great form, absolutely buzzing, and will probably comfortably be Championship next season. I don't think they'll be looking at relegation back to League One next season. So you take your hat off to them. They are in fine form. And when they, like you were saying there about the stats were very similar to ours, we never really got a sniff, apart from Cole, where he spun and then fired it over in front of the Ponty end. When they got a chance, they pretty much buried it, and we didn't. And that was just the difference in slight class, that they were that little bit ahead of us. Although I think the two teams are probably two of the best teams in the league at the minute, but they were that little bit ahead in the finishing, in how they managed the game, and you've got to doff your cap to them for that, I think.
Yeah, and you want them to go up, don't you? Because you don't want to meet them anywhere ever again, do you? You know
Not really, no.
The atmosphere. And I think it's easy. I know, and we put it on our social media of we need to be you need to be 12th man and everything, but it's hard, isn't it? Because it's always edgy. Yeah. They brought 5,000 and credit to them, and listen, there was singing and everything. But I think you will go down, and then in the crazy 2 minutes or 3 minutes before half time, which is a crucial time anyway to concede, and then it was always going to be it was always going to be a bit flat. Yeah. We now know. We're in the playoffs, and I think they counted it, and I think I said 16 times in a 90 minutes commentary, this result doesn't define our season, because I don't think it does. We are where we are, and you know what? Credit and go back a year and where we were, and the non-identity we had.
Absolutely, and I think Duff's mentioned that as well, and quite a few workmates have sort of pulled me to one side the day after and went, "Oh, that was a bit of a bad result last night, wasn't it?" And I've said also, it wasn't. I don't personally think it's a 3-0 game. I thought we played quite well. 3-0 thinks they've wiped the floor with you, but when you've quoted the stats and you look at how well we played, pivotal moment, a couple of minutes before half time, a couple of individual errors. 1 goal before half time is always crucial, but 2 was like. And I've just said to people, we're playing the best team in the league, who are in really good form. Don't let it define our season. We can bounce back. We bounced back all the way through this season, through adversity, bad result here, bad result there. We bounced back and put another run together. And we need to and we're touching on the atmosphere thing. I think if we come fourth, I'm right in saying that both games are on a Saturday, playoff game, semi-finals. So the home one is bound to be a sellout. Surely it's going to be close to a sellout. Whoever's going to come, whether it's Derby, potentially Peterborough, but probably Derby or Bolton, they're going to bring 5,000. The rest of you'd think the rest of Oakwell will be full. I think the atmosphere will be bouncing come whatever, I think, on that. So I don't think we'll have an issue with the atmosphere.
And you talked about today, maybe fourth is strategically 2 Saturdays, 3 o'clock kickoff, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference? Do you look at the table as it is now and say, well, if we finish third, it'll probably be Derby, and if it's fourth, it'll probably be Bolton? Do you look and think that might be easier or not? I mean, Peterborough are still in with a shout. That's the only one.
Yeah.
Is there a preference for you of, well, it could be that
I would I think
Bolton,
the top two
because it's an era for you to the away match.
I know. Yeah. To be fair, I'm sick of the sight of Bolton because I live here. and I know the neighbours of Bolton fans will be going and it's a nightmare. But I think I'd rather play them because I've spoke to so many and they've all pretty much said, I mean, I know what they say doesn't mean what will happen, but they've all kind of said they're not good enough to go up this season. They think next season's the big push. They've said, Victor Adebayo, they signed another couple in January, haven't worked yet. They might come back to haunt us, but they're saying that playoffs is a great thing for them. And they lost at home to Accrington the other night, and they've got Fleetwood tomorrow, which is another. I mean, although they say they struggle against those sort of sides, I just think we know Bolton. We sussed them out in the cup and in the league away. I think Derby might be I know they're not playing well, but there's just something about I wouldn't fancy really 2 games against Derby. I think they'll be stinging after we whooped them 4-1. And I think going there with a full house would be difficult as well. So I would personally think 2 games against Bolton, I think, would, because they're not free scoring. I think Derby on the day could really turn it on, especially at home. And that would be my worry, that we make sure that we come back from Pride Park with something. I don't know what you think. Do you think the same? I think Bolton are not scoring many, and I think we could get a result there and bring them back here.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's funny because we so far, so we've all played 44. We've won 26 games. Both Bolton and Derby have won 21.
Aren't they?
They've drawn 12, and there's literally one goal difference in it. So Bolton's got a goal difference of plus 23. Derby are plus 22, identical otherwise. I'll be honest, I'd rather play Bolton. I think Derby, I know they had the financial constraints, but there was a way around them, because when you have financial constraints, you don't sign players like Conor Hourihane. Like, they don't come cheap, do they? You know what I mean? So I think they've got the class. I think a semi-final of Wednesday Derby, let's play Bolton again. But it would be our luck that Bolton messes up, and we could play Peterborough 3 times in a row, potentially, which, you know what I mean?
You could do. I mean, there could still be a twist in that. I mean, I know Peterborough are relying on others slipping up, but you just never know, do you? I think, are we going to be, Peterborough come here last game of season, and if they still need something, are we going to be as going into 50-50s as much as we want? Are we going to rest players? We just don't know, do we? So could they come here and get a result? They have to get something here.
And that's the next question. You're resigned to the fair, you're 4th. I think it works better. 2 Saturdays, great. You've got MK Dons away, Peterborough at home. Just MK Dons then. Players like Watters, Terrich, Thomas, Benson. Would you now say, keep an eye out and just make sure that some of these players, these key midfielders, whichever one, maybe give them a bit of rest. Maybe say to Cole, listen, I'm going to get you 1 hour, 45 minutes. Then I want you to come off because, we've got at least X amount of matches more. Yeah. Thomas, Luke Thomas, one of our best players at the start of the season. But Benson, I'll be honest, when Benson came on Tuesday night, I saw flashes of, see, that's what he can do. And I tell you, one other one that we haven't seen a lot of is Barry Cotter. He came on for Jordan Williams, and twice he took his man on down the sideline and he bet him. And I know, it might have gone out for a throw or whatever, but we talk about the service. I think Jordan Williams, as good as he's been, and he was a game changer, wasn't he, when he came back from injury and he started playing.
Absolutely.
But you look at Barry Cotter, he's got a monster of a throw, which is a bit of a weapon. But he was just ready to take people on, and that sometimes with Williams, he seems to have to chase the ball and then loses out. Whereas Cutter with his feet, anyway, would you make changes, or do you say no? It's a winning team, and that mentality, and that has to keep going. So I wouldn't make any changes, because then you've got the ask as well. What about injuries?
It's a tough one, isn't it? It really is, because you want to keep the momentum going, but you also, if anybody's got a slight knock or anybody's not 100%, start them on the bench. I wouldn't drop them. I'd have them on the bench, but I hope he doesn't rest it too much, because I'm going tomorrow. So I want to see a strong team and I want to see a win. But I think you're right, really. If Connell isn't 100%, or I'd wrap him up in cotton wool. Probably put, but I can see him doing it. He's talked about it, Duff, but he's also torn with keeping the momentum going and being fair on the league as well. So he's not going to throw a load of kids in there. He's not going to start with Jallo tomorrow. Well, I don't think he is. But yeah, I could see you could probably Cotter in defence, Benson in the middle, Teddy Short. That you could make three, couldn't you? 3 changes. Yeah. Drop Cole to the bench, Connell to the bench, Williams to the bench, or something like that, and say, right, well, we'll wrap you up in cotton wool and give you 20 minutes, half an hour, or something. I think that's quite reasonable to do. It'd still be a strong side, wouldn't it? And then also those lads who come in, chance of a shirt there for the playoffs. See what you can do.
This is it, isn't it? It's a competition for places, and the competition creates better quality, doesn't it? People up it another 5 or 10%. We have to have, evening Mr. Eisted. His Harry did his difficult match for him, especially at home and beaten it in near post at the corner. I mean, there's lots of people there that I'm sure there would be a player normally that guards that point, and it was like a flick header on. And anyway, but redeemed himself because they had a chance of 3-0, and the penalty and a bit disputed. Stopped that. Save. Still went in later. But I tell you what I thought. When you go into the playoffs, it becomes a pressure cooker, doesn't it? And the atmosphere is different. And what I saw on Harry Eisted was cool, calm, collected. At that point, with 5,000 away fans behind him, he was just focused. And I've been impressed with him anyway. We know we have. Yeah. But that tells me something, because when we've come up against some of these better teams and you're 2-0 up, it's easy to have that confidence. But actually, to be 2-0 down and still save a penalty, you know what I mean? It's. And
I tweeted out about Eisted and straight after the penalty, and I was just like, you've got to enjoy him, because these performances he's doing for Barnsley, you're not telling me that other bigger championship clubs are looking and going, he's had a great season, he's out of contract. And maybe we might not sign it. We'd love to sign him, we know that, but we might not get him. So enjoy him while he's here. And then a few tweeted back. I mean, everybody's entitled to opinion, and I'm not saying I'm right, but a few were like, I don't think he's any different than Collins or any better than Collins, but I don't know. For me, he's a lot more calmer, reassured than Collins is.
Confident, and I think,
we need him fully fit for these playoffs.
We talked earlier this year, but we talked about the month of March, and that was going to be vital to our season because we had some big visitors. We had Plymouth and anyway, he started playing, and it's like the Oxford. You go home and you're almost disappointed that we only scored 2 because we were just free scoring. It was always 3 or 4, and I think the defense
well now, isn't it?
Yeah, and the defense played. There was a calmness about the defense, and I think if you have somebody behind you guarding those nets, that just has that bit of confidence. Bearing in mind, there's a Connor Chaplin and I said, go way back. They played schoolboy football together. They were best mates, blah, blah, blah. Because Mr. Eisted, good evening, put on Twitter afterwards that Chaplin said to him, I told you I'd score past your Harry, didn't I? And I have to say, and people can say what they want and I'll get abused, but in that number 10 role, because he's not the biggest, is he? But you don't need to be when you got passes and when you can when you have the ability that he has. And I think that's one that got away.
If you've got that footballing brain, sometimes you don't need the legs, and you see it with a lot of top players like Modric now. And I'm not saying Connor Chaplin's a Modric, but you know what I mean.
No, yeah.
With it. Some of these small, because he's a smaller player, isn't he? Might not always be blessed with the pace, but if you've got a footballing brain, John Sheridan was a classic for it in midfield. He played until he was like 40. Absolute classic. He gets some young lads around him and just spray the ball, and he just is at the top of his game, and he is made for a number 10, not out wide like we played him.
Well, and it's a little bit. He is like, we are the victim of bad management that season because he didn't enjoy himself. He was out mainly out on the left, I believe, at front, which never really suited him. And we had no identity. We had no real style. And of course, you know,
it was like was he part of a front three? I think Woodrow up front, and then
and he was wide, wasn't he?
Thomas, Chaplin. It just didn't work, did it? Well, in flashes, but not enough.
No. And K Duns then. Sorry, before we do that, I saw something on Twitter, and I know the polls that BFC polls 23 or whatever they're called put out. I quite like. I'm always retweeting because it gives you a bit of an indication how people are feeling. And there was Callum Styles, because he signed a new contract before he went to Millwall, didn't he? I'm not sure. Millwall player saying he can come back if he wants, because I don't think they're that impressed. Given that the head coach that we've got, and given the squad that we've got, besides your personal sort of opinion, do you think Callum Styles could fit in the system that we're playing at the moment?
I think he could fit in it. I do. Certainly bombing up, because he played that sort of position, didn't he? He could almost go box to box, down that left-hand side, was it? Where he could drop into a fight. 1 minute he's like left winger, next minute he's left wing back. I do think he could do a job for us. However, I remember I put something out the other month actually, because he got an injury. I'm not sure if it was about March time, February, March time or something. And pretty much universally, the comments from Barnsley fans were, don't want him back, attitude's all wrong, he didn't want to be here, he didn't want to start the season here. And you could understand it at the time. We got relegated. All the other better players were leaving. He's got a chance to play for the Championship. You know, his head's going to be turned. I don't think he'd want to come back if we didn't go up.
No.
If we went up, it'd be interesting to see whether he'd come back and what the reaction of the fans would be. But I do think he could do a job in this squad. I think if we go up and it doesn't come off for him at Millwall, we need to strengthen. And he is a Championship player, and that's what we're going to need to recruit. We've got to recruit better because, let's face it, this squad, as bits in it are quite good, it just gets spat out of the Championship.
Well, that was my final question before we go to the forecast. I said to my wife, although she rarely listens to me, like, it's not just a match tonight, because Ipswich are in the form of their lives. It's a real test of where we are, actually. I know we've done really well and we've played home and blah, 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 but this is a real test of actually how good we really are. So that was a bit disappointing with 3-0. But I do think I spoke to Steve. The traffic was terrible afterwards. 20 minutes aside the West End. Lovely stand, but just to be stood still, but it is what it is. And I rang Steve, and he said, you look at that and you think, enjoy what we've got at the moment.
Yeah.
Playoffs, please go up. Don't think that this squad, that this needs, at least in 3 or 4 positions, a bit of an overhaul, because otherwise, and I'll tell you what he said. He said at the back, you need at least 1 more, because even if you stay with the same system, because you have to get covered. If Bobby Thomas don't sign, you need somebody of that ilk. Yeah. I know Cundy's been on a couple of times. Where else? I mean, midfield, we've just talked, haven't we? We've got Thomas, we've got Benson, we've got Kane, we've got Connell. We've got Cadden out on so many. Where do we need, if that all comes off and we do go up, how many players are we looking at and what positions are we looking at to strengthen? Not maybe for players to leave us, but just to increase that competition places.
I'll be brutally honest, and I think as good a season Liam Kitchen's had, I don't think he's Championship. I think he's a good League One player. And that's, people shoot me down. He's had a great season. I think he's great. I really like him. But is he a mid-table Championship player? Don't think so. Jordan Williams is a tidy League One player. He's not. I don't think he's Championship material. Devante Cole, I'll be honest, in the Championship up against those defences, he will. you need a goal scorer, and as good a season he's had, he will not get the goals in the Championship. I think he's a good League One player. You could probably argue, and they're just Norwood's never played at that level. He's getting a bit older now. I just think it's a good unit, but we're a good League One side.
Yeah.
You'd have to buy five in key positions. I really do.
And don't forget the people that are leaving. Bobby Thomas, Josh Martin will be terribly missed. All the loan players. Adam Phillips. So Tadic. So
see, for me, it's somebody like what I would be looking at is like a Tom Edwards. If you could sign Tom Edwards and get him back and put him in that position, I think he's a Championship player. I mean, he's at Stoke. I think he looked a Championship player. You need to be signing somebody like that who is of that ilk, because I just think you come up against some of these sides that are established in that division. I just think I think we're cruising for a bit of a bruising, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. It's time, I suppose, if it does happen, and we all hope that it will. The rose-tinted sunglasses need to go on, and we need to look at the squad, not the day after we've beaten Wednesday at Wembley. We need to let the alcohol out of our system and then have a sober look a couple of days later.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Duffham had said he was sitting down with Khalid I don't know, I think he's done it now, or they're looking towards transfers. It must be difficult because they've got to look at it, well, budget-wise, if we don't go up, we're looking at these players. But if we go up, we get this money. We're looking at these players. So nobody actually knows until the end of May who we're actually going to put bids in for.
It's making two shopping lists, one for Lidl and one for Marks and Spencer's, isn't it? And just depending on,
other supermarkets are available.
Yes, of course. So, evening, Mr. Tesco. Just before we finish, you're going tomorrow, you said, MK Dons. Let's do a quick score forecast and who's going to score first or back. I'll go first and I'll put I haven't got a reputation because I'm I'll say that Barnsley will win and we will win 3-0 and Josh Benson will score first.
I'm going 2-0 victory and Adam Phillips.
It's you know what, but this has been the good thing about Barnsley this season. There is always something to talk about, isn't there? You know what I mean? Like, I suppose if you were the Ipswich podcast and I've listened to them and they are really good, it's hard, isn't it, to keep talking about. At least we lose now and then, so we can have a moan and a groan, and then we come back and everything is fine again. Ian, safe journey down tomorrow to MK Dons. Really, I've been to MK Dons before. We won 3-1 that day, and Chris Dagnall scored first. I know this because I had a bet on Barnsley to win 3-1. Chris Dagnall to score first. It's a really funny stadium, and I think there was lots of praise from the Ipswich fans for our stadium. And just the atmosphere and the greetings got by security and everything. MK Dons is like the complete opposite, isn't it? It's a big stadium.
Yeah. It's 30,000, doesn't it? Yeah, but nobody in it.
and there'll probably be, I don't know, whatever. I know some of the Barnsley fans are already there because they do the famous overnighters. I know the Manx Reds are there already. I believe the Courthouse Reds might have gone already as well. So, I'm sure the Barnsleyans will be in good voice. So if you're travelling down tomorrow...
And it's fancy dress as well, although I'm not partaking. My lad he's already got his outfit.
Oh, right. So can people keep an eye out? Because it's Friday night now. I will upload this later on this evening. Who do we look out for then tomorrow? Is it a Smurf? Is it Super Mario? Is it not Incredible Hulk?
He's gone for the Goonies, that sloth one that goes, "Hey, you guys." He's got the face mask.
Hey, you guys.
Superman t-shirt. I said, the police, you're going to have to hide that mask. The police won't let you in, going, "Oh, you hide your identity." So if you see this really horrible looking sloth, it's my lad, and I'll be stood next to him going, "I'm not with him."
Ian, as always, thanks for joining us this evening. Looking forward to your reaction to the match on your blog. And on is it Tykes_blog on Twitter? Is that right?
It is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So keep an eye out on Twitter. And yeah, we'll be back next week where we'll be looking back at that fantastic victory away at MK Dons and looking forward at the last match of the season. How quick has that gone? Match day, the last one. Fantastic to finish at home, which is always nice. The player of the season, we'll talk about next season. Who was our player of the season, our goal of the season. And we'll look at the state of the table because there might be a bit more clarity about who we'll be facing in the playoffs. But if you're going tomorrow, safe journey, bring back 3 points. And on behalf of Barnsley Sport and the Talk Sport Fan Network, you've been listening to the Reds Report with Ian from the Tykesblog and myself. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.